Hello everyone, welcome to Online Classes by Time. Today we are going to run through the basics of reading comprehension. Reading comprehension. Now this is an inherent part of every exam that you're going to take. Whether you sit for the BBA exam or the BMS exam or the law exam or the IPM exam, reading comprehension, this section is going to be there every time. Now let us look at the importance of reading comprehension. Now that brings us to the importance of language. Language skills are very, very important when you're trying to communicate with others, whether it is written communication or verbal communication. Now reading, listening, writing, all these form part of the communication process. Coming to English. Now English is a language that is used all across the world. When you pass out from your college, while you're in college, this is one language that you will be using extensively. Now reading comprehension tests various aspects of your abilities. The one thing that it tests is that whether you're able to understand and comprehend the written word. So we can say that it is designed to test a person's ability to understand and evaluate ideas. The author would have expressed his opinions, whether you're able to understand what the author is saying or not. Now this will have various components. It will also deal with how good your vocabulary is, how well you're able to grasp the nuances of the grammatical tools that the author has used. Then you also need to understand the idea flow. By this we mean how is one paragraph connected to the next, to the next, to the next. So when we join all these idea flows together, we get a very coherent, logical idea flow that sums up the whole passage. So to get to the central idea properly, you need to understand the idea flow. Say a passage has got 4 paragraphs and you're unable to comprehend what is there in the third paragraph. Then the complete understanding of the passage is not going to be there with you. Now we come to another point. The reading comprehension section also tests your ability to draw inferences on the basis of the ideas that have been expressed. Now to identify similarity or contradiction between ideas, all this you need to do in a limited period of time. Time is of great value, my dear, in any competitive exam, right? You don't have the whole day to sit with the question paper and go through it. So you have to read fast enough for you to be able to answer all questions. At the same time, you should not be compromising on the understanding part at all. Now, while reading, there are 2 things that you need to consider. One, whether you're doing active reading or you're doing passive reading. There is a difference between the two. On a daily basis, when we pick up the newspaper, what do we see? We run through the headlines that are given on the first page, second page. On the third page, we see what is happening in our local areas. Some articles that catch our eye, we are going to read only those. Otherwise, we quickly skim the topics or the headlines that are there and we form certain opinions about whatever is written. Now that is passive reading. Or, that means you're just getting literal thing. You're not thinking deeply about what is written. Whereas active reading requires you to think deeply about what is written. There is a nursery rhyme that goes by, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Now, when a passive reader, what will he do? When you ask a passive reader, okay, what did you read? What was there? So the person is going to tell you that there's a girl named Mary and she has a pet. The pet is a lamb, which is white in color, and the lamb follows Mary wherever Mary goes. That is passive reading. Now, what about active reading? Think, what more can you read? Can we say, reading these 2 lines, can we say something about the leadership qualities of Mary? Can we say that she was a charismatic leader? Can we talk about the lamb as being a meek follower? who followed the leader wherever the leader went. The color white that has been mentioned over here, the little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. The color white is emblematic of innocence. Can we say that the lamb was innocent? Hence it followed Mary wherever she went. You know, if you dig a little deeper, this can even be taken as an analogy of a very charismatic leader, yes, and the whole population or the populace following him, right? So that is active reading. You know, it is not necessary that what is written is the only thing that is implied. Sometimes the author uses different tools to tell you or to explain certain things to you. So whenever you read something, you should ask yourself questions as to why the author has written this. When you go through a passage, the author gives an opinion and then the author comes up with an example. What is the purpose of that example? The purpose of the example is to explain what he's trying to tell you in a better manner. So the moment you see an example in a passage, your mind should start ticking. Why has the author put in this example? What is he trying to tell me with the help of this example? Now, if you start doing that, that will be active reading. Let's come to another very small example. The two sentences that are given over here. I can complete the work and I will complete the work. These two sentences are more or less in the common world, they are taken to mean the same. When you say that yes, I can do it, it is accepted that you have taken the onus upon yourself to do it. But in actual fact, when you look at it from the grammar point of view, can just denotes a capability. When you say I can complete the work, that means you have the ability to complete the work. You are not promising to complete it. Whereas when you say I will complete the work, there is a certain surety that you are giving that yes, you will. It is your responsibility. You have taken it upon yourself to complete the work. Now, when the author is writing something, the author will have a certain opinion about that issue. How will the author tell you about his opinion? He may state it directly in the first sentence itself or in the last sentence, or he may let you know his approach towards that particular issue with the help of the tone that he has used. Now, when we talk about tone, you must pay attention to the beginning of the passage and to the end of the passage to try to understand the tone. The tone can be positive, negative, or neutral. When we talk about a positive tone, I have given some examples over here, like assertive, witty, advisory, motivational, passionate. So all these are positive tones. There are others, mind you. There are only some that I've mentioned here. Negative tones, prosaic. Now prosaic means boring, humdrum. Critical, the author is criticizing. Now when we talk about, there are certain words that I've given here: critical, caustic, scathing. Now all these three words, even mocking for that matter, all these four words are related to criticizing in a particular manner. Then there are certain words that express neutral tones, like objective. Objective would be when the author takes up a particular issue, looks at it from different angles, from different perspectives. Ironical is also a neutral tone. Same thing is dispassionate. In this way, there are certain words that the author has used that let us know whether the tone is positive, negative, or neutral. In the same way, the style of writing. Now, whether if the author is writing for an editorial for a newspaper, or let's say he's writing a research paper, or whatever he's writing is meant to be an article in a travelogue, so the style of writing is going to differ, right? See, the purpose of the article or where it appears, that influences the style of writing a lot. Now, let's talk about the kind of passages, the kind of topics, the genres that can be there. Yeah, there's absolutely no need to be scared when you start reading a passage about which you don't know anything about. The questions that are there are based on what is given in the passage that has been put before you. It is not necessary for you to have a deep knowledge about various subjects, but it is very helpful if you have an eclectic reading habit. That is, if you read on diverse topics. Start reading on different diverse topics, because that is going to help you with your reading comprehension section a lot. Now, there are certain common problems which are faced by students when they start reading. Now, let me list some of them. The first one is a slow reading speed. What happens if you read slowly? Yes, can you think? When you read slowly, what will happen? One, you will not be able to complete reading the passage, or you may be missing out on answering some of the questions that are there. Now, if that happens, who is the loser? You are the loser, right? Because in the exam, you're not going to get more time to complete the questions that are there. So a slow reading speed is definitely going to affect your exam result. Two, what happens when you're reading very slowly? Your mind tends to wander then, right? So while you're on the third paragraph, then you start thinking about something else which is not related to the passage. So that again will affect your understanding or comprehension of the passage, which then will result in coming up with wrong answers, right? So a slow reading speed is something that is not very good. At the same time, reading so fast that you read the whole thing, but you hardly comprehended the whole central idea that is there. So when you read carefully, read everything, right? You will have to sift through the chaff from the grain. What is the main idea? What are the supporting ideas? So there are main ideas, there are supplementary ideas, and there are supporting features. So you'll have to decide about that. Okay, we'll discuss that when we are discussing the passages. The reading speed can be measured in terms of words per minute. You can read a passage of say 1,000 words and then check how much time you've taken to read that. So the number of words divided by the time taken in minutes would be your words per minute. And if you read on a daily basis, there is no way that your reading speed is not going to increase. Slowly and steadily, you'll get used to reading faster at the same time, not affecting your comprehension too. That is very important, remember. All right, now coming to the next problem, not knowing the meanings of words. Well, your vocabulary skills will come into play here. See, words, different words that are there. Remember the words in the previous slide where we discussed the tones, the positive, negative, and neutral tones. Now, if you don't know the meaning of the words, how will you decide whether the author has used a positive or a negative or a neutral tone? Moreover, if you don't know the meaning of certain words, your complete understanding of that particular sentence or paragraph is going to be missing. That again will affect when you're answering or picking the answer choices. So a good vocabulary definitely helps you in your reading comprehension. In competence in grammar, the author uses various grammatical tools in the form of, say, he may have used an analogy, a simile, a metaphor in order to explain something, right? But if you're not able to grasp that, if you're not able to connect, then again your understanding suffers. So grammar and vocabulary together are very much required in the complete understanding of the reading comprehension passage. Coming to the next point, inability to grasp the focal idea. This happens when you lose track, when in between you think of something else, or you start focusing on something that the author is not focused upon. That's the reason I said that you need to decide what is the central idea and what are the supplementary ideas. The next one is boredom. Many times when the passages are lengthy, which is going to be the case for the IPM students as well as for the CLAT students. Yes, passages are lengthy, paragraphs are lengthy. Yes, then, and on top of that, they are on topics that you're not familiar with. Hold, stay confident, right? Read carefully. All the answers will come from what is given to you. So there's absolutely no need to be scared and skip. Okay? All right, the next one. The act of reading itself is too much of an effort. There is no way out, my dear. You will have to make that effort. You will have to start reading and get used to it. wrong methods of reading. There are some students who, while they read, they put their finger and run it along the line. Now, some of them vocalize, like when they're reading in their mind, their tongue is also moving. That is vocalization. Then the third thing is regression. When you're in the third paragraph, you forget what is there on the first, you go back and read that again. So you're constantly reading, rereading. So you're taking longer time to finish also. At the same time, the idea flow also gets completely mishmashed. So you have to be very careful that you're not doing any of these. No finger reading, no vocalization, and no regression. Another common problem is lack of practice, lack of systematic practice. So what you need to do is you need to read regularly, make it a daily habit. On a daily basis, you must assign a certain time of your day for reading. Let it be the newspaper that comes to your house and start with that. The newspaper has also got different sections. The Sunday magazine that is there has got so many articles on different issues, different types. Start reading from there. Or I would suggest that you read online because most of your exams are going to be online. So reading online on the big screen, a screen full of text is going to be very different from reading from the paper. All right. So now we come to the nitty-gritties of reading comprehension. So what is a paragraph summary? What is the idea flow? How do we get to the central idea? The paragraph summary. Why are we talking about paragraph summary? Why are we not talking about the summary of the passage? Because if you have not understood the paragraphs carefully, if you have not understood how the various paragraphs are connected with one another, you are not going to get to the central idea easily. Or the central idea that you form in mind may be very different from what the author is trying to convey. So my dear, as you read, say you finish reading the first paragraph, as you finish reading, what was there in that first paragraph should register in your mind immediately. That, okay, in the first paragraph, the author has defined a particular issue. In the second paragraph, he's telling us more about it. In the third paragraph, he's giving us the origin. In the fourth paragraph, like that. So slowly and steadily in your mind, that flow should be there. Now, this flow has to be very logical. So each paragraph is connected to the other in a very logical manner. And then when you combine the para summaries along with the idea flow, you have the central idea right in front of you. Okay. Now, see, the passages that come, they are followed by questions. The questions that come in the exam will have multiple choice answers that are given to you. So you will have to pick one or more than one answer depending upon the question. I've been telling you earlier that all the answers are present in the passage itself. So why should it be difficult at all? Or is it that easy? Not so. Because the type of questions that come can be direct questions or can be indirect or critical reasoning based questions. This is a competitive exam that you're preparing for. If there's a direct question that you get correct, there are so many others who would have also got the direct question correct. So how do you score above the others? That is when you're able to get the indirect or inferential questions also correct. And for that, again, a proper understanding of the written word is very much required. The questions, then you can classify the questions also on the basis of whether you need to go back to the passage to cross check the answer. So there are some questions that are based on the central idea or on the tone of the passage, for which you need not go back and cross check. Obviously, you're not expected to go and read the passage all over again for every question that is there. So some of them can be answered. If you've understood the tone and the central idea, you can answer them. You can pick the correct answer without going back to the passage. Whereas there are certain questions like some true and false questions, or where they have asked the meaning of a particular word as used in the passage, there you need to go back. Or there's a question related to some data or some name that has been mentioned in the passage, then you need to go back and confirm the answer before you mark it and type it in. All right. So I hope all of you have got the first handout of reading comprehension, RCHO 3532001, in your hands. Right? So let's start with the first passage over here. What I will do is I will read the first passage line by line, and we are going to discuss line by line. And then thereafter we will think about the summary of the passage. All right. We start now. Kalari or Kalaripayattu of ancient India is the world's oldest martial art. Is there any hidden meaning here? No. So this sentence is just defining what is Kalaripayattu. In fact, it is the mother of all martial arts in the world. Mother of all martial arts, what does that mean? What is the author trying to tell us? That it is one of the most difficult martial arts. Now the third sentence. This art is said to have its origin in Rishi Agastya and in Parshuram. Again a statement of fact. Is it? Not exactly, because it says this art is said to have its origin. So the author is not sure. He is telling us what others believe. The next sentence. Agastya is a great name in Ayurveda, the main Indian medical system. Fine. There's nothing to read in between the lines over here. Kalari means battlefield. Kalaripayattu means practicing the arts of the battlefield. Directly stated again. Students start with unarmed kicks and punches, then would graduate to sticks, swords, spears and daggers, and finally study the marmas. So in this sentence, the author has moved from one end of the spectrum to the other. The students start with simple unarmed kicks and punches and finally reach the marmas. Now, do we know what are marmas? As of now, we don't. But we have clearly understood that it is something very different from the simple techniques that are there. So there have to be some complex techniques that are known as marmas. Now let's read ahead. Now this comprehension we have already made before the author has told us what a marman is. Now let's get to the next sentence. Marman is a pressure point in the human body, and experienced practitioners can disable or kill their opponents by a mere touch at the opponent's marman. Now here we get the definition of marman from the author, which is not very different from what we had thought. We had thought that it is something very different from being simple, right? So here it is. All right, the next sentence. This technique, also known as Marma Kalai, is taught only to level-headed persons to prevent its misuse. Only to level-headed persons? Why so? He's given an answer: to prevent its misuse. What does that mean, to prevent its misuse? So the author is implying that if this technique, if this very dangerous technique is taught to people who are hot-headed, yes, who get angry very fast, who don't think in a practical, logical manner, then they can use this technique in a very dangerous manner on others. Hence, they should not be taught. Only the level-headed persons should be taught this technique. So it's a small passage, just a simple paragraph. And they have asked you to write the summary of the above passage in 30 words. Writing the summary is not going to come in the exam, right? But you won't be writing there, but you have to write the summary here. The summary has to be in your head for you to understand paragraph wise the whole passage. So, let us think of it like this. Let us think of a human body. So there are the bones and then there is the flesh, right? So if you remove the flesh, the skeleton that is left, that is the summary that we want over here. Okay? So in this, what would be the summary? What will the summary have? No, this is not the same summary as in the English that you had in school, where they said that the précis or the summary has to be 1/3 of the passage. It's not like that. It's just the central idea that we're talking about, and supported by supplementary ideas. That's it. So over here, so we're talking about Kalari or Kalaripayattu. The author gives us its origin. The author tells us what it is. Then thereafter, he tells us that it also involves a certain technique which is quite dangerous and which should not be taught to others, which should be taught only to level-headed persons. In between that line that is there, students start with unarmed sticks, punches. So how will you put that over here in the summary? You can say that students start with simple techniques and then go on to learn complex techniques. Some of them very dangerous, and hence they are not all taught to every student of Kalaripayattu. Only the level-headed are taught those techniques. Fine, that's it. So that was just the skeleton. What are the other things that we did not include over here? We did not include what? This part. Agastya is a great name. Yes, we did not include all the specifics that are given: unarmed kicks, punches, stakes, stones, spears, daggers. You need not put all of these in your summary. You have to, put it in a concise, precise manner, right? So that is how you understand when you read any passage that is there. Coming to the next passage. This is a little lengthier. The passages in your exam are going to be like this. They're not going to be one paragraph. Now in this, if you look at the questions given here, look at the handout that you have. The questions are yes and no questions. Now yes and no questions we have used in the beginning to help you understand that you need to grasp the proper meaning of the passage. Then only you will be able to answer the other questions that are there. So today in this class, we are going to see how well we understand the passage, first in only one reading, and then if required for some of the answers that we need to pick, we may have to go back and cross-check. Let's try to understand, have a good understanding with one reading itself. Okay, so here we go. Again the same thing, but here we will not be analyzing sentence by sentence, but we will be analyzing paragraph by paragraph, and we'll be trying to link together the paragraphs, getting the idea flow, then coming to the central idea. Okay, all right, the first passage and the first paragraph over here. Afraid of being haunted by his dead wife's ghost, once a prisoner made an unusual request to the jail authorities to have his jail cell better lit. While many might regard this as pure paranoia, there are some who understand exactly what he is experiencing. So do ghosts really exist? While I certainly believe that there is a strong supernatural presence all around us, I feel it is the fear of anticipation which is more terrorizing. The feel of what if I see a ghost is much more scarier than actually coming face to face with one. Now, what was there in the first paragraph? Why did the author start telling us about that prisoner in the jail? That he was just introducing the idea of ghosts with the help of that prisoner, and that there are people and then who are scared of ghosts. Then he brings upon another point of view that there are some who are not scared. So the request that the prisoner had was that he wanted his jail cell to be better lit. What does that mean? That his jail cell was in darkness, you can say. Not complete darkness, but yes, it was not well lit. And why did he want there to be more light in his cell? Because he said that if he felt that if that is not the case, then his dead wife's ghost is going to come and haunt him. So, we can say that according to the prisoner, the ghost is going to haunt him only in the dark. And hence he wants his cell to be better lit. That is one understanding that we have from here. Then the next sentence says, while many might regard this as pure paranoia, who are the many? The many are the others, not the prisoner. Apart from the prisoner, the others who are told about or who get to know about what the prisoner is saying. So this sentence tells us that there are many people who do not believe in ghosts. And at the same time, the same sentence says that there are many who understand exactly what he's experiencing. So according to the author, the others, the people, general public that is there, so some of them believe in ghosts, some of them don't. And then he puts up the question, do ghosts exist? Does he give an answer? He says, While I certainly believe that there is a strong supernatural presence, see, he doesn't use the word ghost. He feels that it is the fear of anticipation that is more terrorizing. The fear that, no, that the people have in mind, what if I confront a ghost, or what if the ghost confronts me, right? What if I'm going in a dark alley and suddenly there's a ghost in front of me? What will happen? What kind of shape the ghost will have? What will it do to me? So all these feelings, they cause more terror in the mind than actually coming face to face with one. Okay, now we go to the next paragraph. 20 years ago, long before the Hollywood film The Sixth Sense created the whole I see dead people blitzkrieg, Pia Sinha knew she was different from the other 10-year-olds in her class. Pia says, I was looked upon as a freak whenever I told people that I could see and even converse with ghosts. Even my parents wanted me to get professional help. Today, a lot of people, sometimes even doctors, come to me requesting me to conduct a seance so that they can get in touch with their dead ones. It's strange how non-believers become believers when they want something. Who is saying this? Pia Sinha. And Pia Sinha, according to the second paragraph, was a psychic. Since childhood, she had this supernatural ability. She confessed to have that, or that ability, that she was able to converse with dead people. She was able to see them and talk to them. Now, this sentence, when she says, even my parents wanted me to get professional help, people considered her to be a freak. So that means people did not believe her. Even her parents did not believe her. They wanted her to seek professional help. But in the same paragraph, she says the doctors, now even the doctors come to her to conduct a CN so that they can get in touch with their loved ones who are no more. So she says that non-believers become believers when they want something. And what do they want? They want to connect to the people, to their loved ones who are no longer there in this world. Now, Pia Sinha, the first sentence, 20 years ago, long before the Hollywood film Sixth Sense, dash, 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 right? So what came, Pia Sinha and her realization came earlier, or the Sixth Sense? Definitely Pia Sinha. Sixth Sense came later. Sixth Sense was a movie that became very famous. It had a little girl who was able to see the dead, talk to them. The movie, can we say over here? Now, those of you, now some of us would not have seen the movie, some of us would have watched the movie. Those of us who know about the movie, should we connect that the movie was based on Pia Sinha? From the passage, can we say that? No, we cannot. So many times, when you're reading any outside knowledge that you have, don't try to put everything in here. Read it from the author's perspective. Get into the shoes of the author and see what he's trying to tell you, he or she is trying to tell you. Okay, now we come to the third paragraph. While the supernatural has its believers, many mental health experts debunk such claims. According to them, the reasons for such beliefs are varied, often detached from reality. Very often, a trauma such as the death of someone close or can trigger off hallucinations and psychosis, which can be termed as post-traumatic stress disorder. Such reactions abate after proper counseling and medication. People who believe in the existence of ghosts and other supernatural elements are conditioned by the environment they live in. They externalize these beliefs by giving them a form and a shape. Then there are those who are ambivalent. Whether they believe in the existence of ghosts or not, they do not dispute others' claims. So this paragraph talks about three types of people. One, those who debunk such talk. What is debunk? Who totally refuse to accept them to be true, who refute these talks. They are the mental health experts, and maybe others also fall in that category, right? So according to them, all those people who claim to believe in ghosts, so they are not actually seeing ghosts, they are just going through a post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, then there's the second type who believe in ghosts. Now, according to the author, Their reactions are conditioned by their environment, what people around them or what the society talks about, thinks about, what are the superstitions that are inherent in the society. And the people who are, see, the word superstitions has not been used, but we can make out. When they say that, the supernatural elements are conditioned by the environment they live in. They externalize these beliefs, now this belief that there is something supernatural. So they try to give it a form, a body in the form of a ghost. Then the third category who are ambivalent. What is the meaning of ambivalent? Ambi means both. Ambivalent means those who are okay, who have, this side also, that side also, both are fine. So over here the next sentence kind of gives you the meaning of ambivalent. Whether they believe in the existence of ghosts or not, they may or may not believe, but they are not going to dispute what the others are saying. Okay, you believe in ghosts, fine. I don't believe, or I believe, I'm fine with my opinion, you be fine with your opinion. These are the ambivalent categories. So there are three categories mentioned over here. The last paragraph. Until a few hundred years ago, people believed that the earth was flat, but they were proven wrong. Although I have never seen a ghost, I believe that the day may be very near when their existence will be confirmed. While the debate questioning supernatural beliefs and reasoning with the decidedly unreasonable continues, one question still remains unanswered. Is there something, or more importantly, someone out there? So what is the author saying over here? In the first sentence, he says that sometimes there are things that, like in the earlier case, people believed that the earth was flat. Later, it was proved that the earth is not flat. Earth is round. Same way, what we believe today may be disproved later, sometime later. We don't know when. Yes, the author ends on a very open question. Is there something or someone out there? Has he come up with an answer? Are there ghosts? Do ghosts really exist? The question that he had asked in the first paragraph, has he answered that? No, he says that we don't know yet. We don't know yet. Maybe they do, but we don't know. That's what he says. Okay? All right. So that is how we have understood the passage. So in the first paragraph, he introduces the idea of ghosts. Yes. He tells us that some people believe, some people don't. Yes. Then he tells us that even those who believe, yes, the anticipation is more terrorizing. Then he comes to the second paragraph when he talks about P.R. Sinha as an example. That's an example over here. So P.R. Sinha is an example of a person who believes in ghosts. Yes. So P.R.'s experiences that have been mentioned here in this passage. Again, the same thing. Some people believe, some people don't believe. We come to the third paragraph. The third paragraph, the author very clearly divides everyone into three categories: those who do not believe, those who believe, and those who are ambivalent. The last paragraph, what about the author? Which category does he fall in? Can we decide? No, because he himself is not very clear whether he believes or doesn't believe. He says that, is there something or someone out there? He doesn't know the answer. He says one question still remains unanswered. And the same paragraph, first sentence, when he says that what is true now may not be true later, right? So he ends on a very open note. Now let's get to the questions. If you see here, the questions are not multiple choice questions given to you. This being the first lesson, we are just trying to make you understand how to read the passage, how to understand and link together paragraphs, right? So the yes and no questions, let's see if we can answer them without rereading, based on what we have understood while we were reading. Okay? Now let's see. Let's go to the first question over here. Mental health experts who do not believe in the existence of ghosts are not ambivalent. Are they? Are they not? Mental health experts and ambivalent, but mental health experts are very sure that there is no such thing as a ghost. So they are not ambivalent? Yes. The answer to this question has to be a yes. They are definite that they do not believe in the existence of ghosts. So yes to this. The next question. The prisoner mentioned in the passage probably believes that ghosts haunt only dark places. That is the reason he's asking his cell to be well lit. He's scared of the dark. He's scared that his wife's ghost is going to come and haunt him and terrorize him if the cell is in darkness or is dimly lit. So answer to this, he believes that ghosts haunt only dark places. Yes again. According to mental health experts, ghosts exist only in people's imaginations. Mental health experts, what did they say? Did they believe in ghosts? No. So according to them, do ghosts really exist? No. They said that, remember, they said that those people who think that they see ghosts or they believe in ghosts, they are going through some kind of stress disorder. So according to them, ghosts exist only in people's imaginations? Yes again. Most people do not believe in the existence of ghosts. What about this? From where do we think? First paragraph, he mentioned that people don't believe in the existence of ghosts. He did. He said many would think that what the prisoner was saying would be akin to paranoia. He said that. Author said that. Yes. So from that, we can say that yes, most people do not believe in the existence of ghosts. Yes, again to the sixth one. We go to the seventh question over here. Now, in the seventh one, the word decidedly in the last paragraph implies that the society believes in the existence of ghosts. No, this does not mean so. If you go back and read that line again, the sentence again, it says the complete sentence, not just part of it. While the debate questioning supernatural beliefs and reasoning with the decidedly unreasonable continues. Decidedly unreasonable continues. One question still remains whether ghosts exist or not. So this answer over here is a definite no. Now see, the word decidedly is given in quotes. So there are many times when things are given in quotes, there is a certain purpose for that, right? Either the author is trying to emphasize on that, he wants you to pay attention to that word, or he's using that word in a sarcastic manner. So these are other nuances that we are going to learn as we run through different lessons of reading comprehension. Now we come to the eighth question. The author feels that a ghost may not be as scary as people believe it to be. Remember the first paragraph where we discussed that? The thought of meeting a ghost is the one that causes more terror than actually coming face to face with the ghost. So from where, what can we answer from there? The author feels that a ghost may not be as scary as people believe it to be. Definite yes. The thought is scarier, he says. So yes for the eighth also. P.R. Sinha was the inspiration behind the making of the movie, The Sixth Sense. Can we say that? No, we cannot. It is not implied in the passage. It is just said that all this talk about people being psychic, people having extra sensory perception, or all this things related to ghosts, all this existed even before the movie came into the picture. So P.R. Sinha was the inspiration behind making the movie. Can we say this? No, we can't. The society in which a person lives determines his or her beliefs in ghosts. Yes, the last paragraph, it supports this. Yes, the last paragraph, it was mentioned that the environment, based on the environment, a person forms certain beliefs. So there's a yes to the 10th question. Then we have non-believers in ghosts respond well to counseling and medication. Non-believers in ghosts. If they're non-believers, why would they be given counseling and medication? Counseling and medication can obviously be given for certain diseases, but in the passage, we are not discussing other diseases that are there. Yes? So, non-believers in ghosts respond well? No. According to the passage, those who believe in ghosts, yes, it is mentioned that they should be given counseling and medication. Certain group of people think so. So the answer to the 11th one is a no. The 12th, until now there is no strong evidence to prove the existence of ghosts. Is there? Can you answer on the basis of the last paragraph? Has the author given any strong evidence? No. Even though that example of Priya Sinha is there, that even doctors go to her to get in touch with their dead loved ones, that is the evidence is not strong enough, because in the last paragraph the author very clearly says, leaves the question, he ends the passage with an open question. Do ghosts really exist? Is there anything or anyone out there? There is no definite answer, he says. So the answer to this question, until now there is no strong evidence to prove the existence of ghosts. Answer has to be yes. So you understand, this is how we go through the questions. This is how you understand. Now, questions in your exam are not going to be yes and no questions. As I said earlier, there will be a question statement and there will be 4, sometimes 5, but generally 4 answer options given over there. So you have to read the answer option, read the question carefully, read the answer option, decide whether it is connected to the question or not. If it is connected, can it be the answer to that question? If it is not connected, then it is straight away eliminated. Yes, the strategy to go through the questions and answer options in such a manner that you maximize your correct answers. That is what we will discuss in the later lectures that are there. So today, what did we discuss in all? We discussed what is a reading comprehension, how or why should you be interested in learning more about it, different types of passages, different tones, different styles, how to understand or form paragraph summaries in your mind, then idea flow, then the logical central idea. We applied these when we were discussing the paragraphs. What is basic or fundamental to what the author is telling us, and what is the extra features that he's added it. So central idea, supplementary idea, and supporting features, all these things, right? So here is the key to all the other questions that are there in your handout. What is required of you now is to go through the complete handout, mark your answers, check your answers with respect to the key. Where you get the answers wrong, read that part again, see where you've gone wrong, whether you did not understand the paragraph carefully, properly, or whether you misunderstood the question. Were you in too much of a hurry to get to the answer? Right? So as I said in the beginning, that reading speed, yes, a good reading speed is required. At the same time, not at the cost of your comprehension. You need to understand properly, otherwise you're going to get your answers wrong. So after you have answered and checked with the help of the key, analyze what you have done. Find out where your mistake is. Here again, I reiterate, active reading is what is required. We will run you through different handouts, then you'll have your practice booklets with you. You can practice with their help also. And after some time, when you have gained a certain expertise, a certain level of confidence, then you start off with your practice tests. In the meantime, pick up that newspaper, pick up that magazine, pick up that book, open your Kindle, download some good books, not comics, some nice books on different topics, or just open the e-portals of different newspapers and magazines and read online, right? So happy reading.